Right. Well, that was pre.
That was a week and a half ago.
Right. So which is like a year.
Yeah, right.
I'm gonna say I don't want to touch sports. Can we stay far away from sports?
Yeah.
Let me send a quick text to Karen.
And then actually, Bob, Mark, I've talked to Dan Dewar about his license request. He said he wasn't informed that we were going to talk about it at our previous meeting. Was it last week? Whenever that gets put on the agenda, can we be sure to give him a heads up?
Sure. Yeah, and I just had a drop out of the coalition, formerly our CASA meeting, and it was being discussed as I left.
Yeah, I would have to get to that. I decided to sneak in a little bit of dinner tonight. Although our agenda is going to be short.
I don't know if you want to just skip the command update, because really we talked at least 50+% of the time about high school sports.
Might be just worth indicating that the group, continues to meet, and the latest governor's orders, I think, are worth just kind of re-emphasizing.
Okay.
I think that's probably it, though. We also need to dance a little bit until Carlo joins, because I know he wants to participate.
Oh, in the liquor? Okay.
Yeah.
We only had a good topic. Meeting minutes, how's that?
Are the minutes in the pack?
No, but I have some if you want me to send them to you. I just finished them.
Okay.
Are they in? If they're not in the packet, or not, are they in the agenda?
They are in
They're
the
on
agenda.
the agenda, yeah.
They are.
We should probably put those off for the next meeting, just for.
Anne usually has edits too.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's
Good call.
Yeah, I think. Let me just see what I have on here. Yeah, we'll roll. Hey, Karen, thank you for joining.
Hey, Karen, we're at quorum, so I'm gonna not discuss anything else on the agenda.
Okay, and then so RCTV will give you a 3, 2, 1 countdown, and then we'll begin. 3, 2, 1. Good evening, folks. I'd like to call the December 16th, 2020 Select Board meeting to order. On tonight's agenda, which I'm going to try and share here. There we go. So we are broadcast on RCTV, Verizon Channel 33, Xfinity Channel 22, also available on Facebook Live. Find the link on the RCTV website, as well as YouTube. We do have provision this evening for public comment. I don't believe we have anyone that has indicated so far. Okay. Want to emphasize and then re-emphasize the resources that are available to residents. By going to the town website, readingandmay.gov, there are specific emails that you can use to reach out. Human and Elder Services, COVID-19 help at ci.reading.ma.us. Also for general questions, you can also reach Town Hall for inquiries, needs, any comments that you have. We have some very specific resources for the community through the Reading Coalition for Prevention and Support. We work through Elliott Emergency Services, which has a 24/7 mobile service for psychiatric evaluation, crisis intervention, stabilization, and follow-up. And that's for children, adults, and elders that are in distress. It's 24/7, 800-988-1111. We also work with Interface Mental Health. It's a referral helpline if you're looking for a resource. They're available Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, 888-244-6843. The Mass Substance Abuse Information Education Helpline is also available. And last but not least, Sammy Salkin is the outreach coordinator at the Reading Coalition. She can be reached on email, ssalkin@ci.reading.ma.us, or 781-942-6756. And as always, if there's an emergency, you should be calling 911. You may be seeing signs up around town that are talking about our Mask Up program, and in support of the governor's request of everyone. This is very important that we do this. The agenda tonight, we will have just a quick discussion on some COVID-19 related activities. Liaison reports. I don't think we have public comment. We'll see if someone wants to come in. At about 7:30, we'll be talking about potential changes to liquor license fees. I apologize. One of the things that I should do at the start of the meeting is announce who is here from the board. So let me do that. So Karen Herrick is here. Vanessa Alvarado is here, but a little bit under the weather. Sorry, Vanessa. So she's with us, but not on the video right now. And I'm here as well. So we're at quorum. We are expecting Carla to join a little bit later in the meeting. Sorry, I lost my place on the slide. Somehow it bounced. There we go. So just to continue with the agenda, after the liquor license fee discussion, we're going to change things around a little bit tonight. Because Ann's not able to join, we're going to postpone the communications discussion to a later meeting, one of our January meetings. I do want to talk a little bit about liaisons, working relationships, and I think we will not do meeting minutes this evening, only because they're not in the packet as of yet. People may have comments, so we'll bring those up at our next meeting that comes up. And then we'll talk about future agenda items. So before we go to COVID-19, I'd like to do one thing. In our packet this week, you'll see a note from me where I inadvertently copied the whole board on an email to a resident. I apologize for that. The email is in the packet, so you can see what's there. Okay, in terms of COVID-19, Bob, do you have a couple of comments you want to make on that?
Sure, thanks, Mark. Our command group last met a week and a half ago or so, December 7th. We had some discussion about the Middlesex League's vote to not have spectators at winter sporting events. There has been a meeting of the athletic directors since. I've not heard any results, so I really can't give you an update on that. I imagine the school committee may discuss that shortly. We also looked at, I've had some requests from mayors and managers that we take a regional approach towards how to convince people not to have large gatherings, whether by fines or other things. So we discussed some of the best practices, and what we concluded was there's no one solution, which is often the case. You just have to try lots of different tools. The mask up Reading is one example of that. But there didn't seem to be any sense in a punitive approach where somehow, you're starting to penalize or fine people. The Board of Health does have the authority to do that. We have not heard in our region of any of examples where that's happened. I believe it has in a couple of South Shore communities. An example of, a town in the North Shore, there was a large gathering of underage and adults. And they were cited for underage alcohol, but they totally ignored the COVID violation, just as an example. So, cities and towns aren't sort of cracking down on that from a punitive standpoint. It's really much more of a marketing thing. And generally, our town is, I think, doing pretty well. No town's perfect, but we're doing pretty well, better than many. A slight update on the mortgage rental assistance program using CARE funds. I'm on the outskirts of that. The town accountant and Reading Co-op Foundation are working on that, keeping me at arm's length. But I'm aware that through yesterday, there was over a dozen applications, some of them incomplete, so some of them needed more documentation. I am quite certain that the deadline being next Monday at 5 o'clock, we'll get a full report at your next meeting in the first week of January. And certainly for anyone out there listening, I'd encourage you to contact all your friends and neighbors that you think are having a tough time. There's been a layoff or there's been a difficulty because of COVID with less work hours. The town and the co-op foundation are offering up to $5,000 of rent and mortgage forgiveness if you are in arrears. So please spread that word. We've tried to do that, and again, I'd hate to find out in the first week of January that someone that would have qualified didn't know. So we've done everything we can. We did obtain some translation services. That was a challenge for COVID early on. We have those for routine town business and for police business, but this involved privacy and health, so it was a little bit of a different hurdle that we had to jump over, and that has been achieved. We also have tentatively hired a second public health nurse to start in January. The Board of Health will be discussing that at their meeting tomorrow night. Fingers crossed, one never knows till the employee shows up, and especially in the middle of a pandemic. Obviously, finding medical resources at this time is very difficult. You know, an employee's options are great, so it's someone we'd be thrilled to have, and I hope things work out. And that's really the COVID update. I think the next command meeting will either be next Monday or the Monday after. It's tough to know at this time of year with different schedules. We meet as needed, though, in any event. But that's all I have, Mark.
Thanks, Bob. I think that maybe one other thing just to emphasize is just the requests that are coming from the state government, from the governor's office, to please be vigilant, mask up, stay within your bubble, and particularly around the holidays. It's just very important that we keep this as not widespread as possible. I'm not sure what the opposite of widespread is. I guess narrow. Great, thanks. Sorry, Karen.
I was going to comment. Yeah, I appreciate the reminders, Mark. I was a little concerned tonight driving by Home Goods. The parking lot is absolutely full. So I'm having a hard time understanding how that's at a whatever capacity they should be at. You know, it looks like every other Christmas. So I was surprised to see that. But I was also in Stoneham at Red Gate, and that parking lot was full too, but at least there, you had an awful lot of businesses.
Yeah, I can offer a comment, not specifically on tonight because I don't know, but I know that they have been, you know, sort of rationing customers and having lines to get in. So at one point they were doing that. I can't say for tonight for sure.
Great. Carlo, welcome. We're just doing COVID update. Any questions you may have?
No, thank you.
I have a question, Mark.
Please.
Bob, thanks for that update. What is the plan? I know we've touched on this briefly in the past for reopening Town Hall.
Town Hall is reopened, although not tomorrow. So we are open by an appointment basis. We've communicated that to anyone that calls. We have not put out sort of social media advice, which we will do once the virus quiets down in the building, quite frankly. We have had at least 3 that I'm aware of people come in by appointment. One was with me. We have a form for them to fill out before they're allowed in the building. A copy of that form then goes to our public health nurse and one to me. And, you know, that's for contact tracing later. For instance, when someone came to see me, you know, my responsibility, although Joe Huggins did it for me, is to go to the door and make sure the form is filled out, which it was in advance, greet the person, escort them to where the meeting is, and then escort them out. So there's no sort of person wandering the building aimlessly. And again, so far demand very low, which is what we expected. You heard some things last night from department heads about how much has gone online, and we haven't made a big deal of that. We could show you sometime, but you know, Caitlin could tell you that all the license renewals for the first time were done remotely. So we really are serving such a huge percent of the customers' needs remotely. And you know, if you ever hear of someone that needs to get in the building and doesn't know how, just please let me know. We'll make an arrangement.
That's great. Thanks, Bob. And it's great to hear that we've moved more things to a digital format. I'm just thinking of those handful of people that maybe aren't quite as tech savvy. Want to make sure that our services are still available. So that's great to hear. Thanks very much.
Karen.
You know, one other thought, I dropped off a smoke inspection permit today, and I, you know, given the chief's report on decreasing larceny and what happened down on Main Street with the mailbox, the post office box, So I rang the door at the fire department and wanted to hand the physical check to somebody, which, so one option for that might be to install a couple. I mean, people can use a white mailbox or maybe an additional locked box. People can drop off payments and they don't even have to call the staff, but at least then hopefully they'll be a little bit safer if larceny is increasing.
Yeah, that's a good point. We do at the police station and town hall have such a thing. We don't at the fire station. Not a lot of walk-in business at the fire station. So if you went to the side door of town hall from the parking lot, right to the right of the door, you'd see another white lock. I think it's white lockbox where people drop in things. That's been used for donations, but it's been used for other things.
Okay, well,
In addition
maybe
to
it's
the
just a matter of
drive-through mailbox.
publicizing it now as, hey, we're actually going to be using this more, and here it is, and here it is.
Yeah. So
Okay, that's good to know. I wasn't aware of that. I probably walked by it 100 times.
Okay, let's move on to liaison reports. Karen, you want to start? Do you have any reports?
Sure. I spent a lot of time catching up with the Conservation Commission this week. So there's a new policy that Bob and staff have been working on, and now we'll be implementing that. The Conservation Administrator and hopefully a member of the Conservation Commission will be meeting with DPW at least once a month to talk about what projects seem to be on the horizon. And this is a method to improve communication between the departments. DPW doesn't always know everything Conscom needs to know. And, with this COVID just making it tougher for people to communicate, I think this is a good step for making sure they're working together well. So that's what I have for this evening.
Thanks. And RMLD, I know is meeting soon, right? Like in 10 minutes. Awesome. Vanessa, any updates?
None from me, thanks.
Great. Carlo, anything?
Yeah, thanks. I was able, can you guys hear me?
Yes, you're a little soft, but we can hear you.
You're referring to,
Your voice.
Yeah, so I was able to watch some of CPDC. I didn't attend, I think it was a Monday night. And I appreciate their thoroughness in a lot of matters. They were talking about the postmark sign and some other signage being submitted in town. And unbeknownst to me, I'm maybe a little slow and soft, that the update on Bagel World, there was not a site plan review, but they were starting the process on the updates that Bagel World is going to make to actually have a real drive-through and reconfigure the back and update the building. So that was exciting. I know it's made it to social media, but I wasn't aware of that. I know it's been an ongoing issue for many, many years. But I think that will alleviate. They're actually going to have a double drive-through, which was concerning to the CPDC and how they're going to manage that. But that's to be continued. So that was the start of the process. They had some plans. Architect and other engineers was on the call, so that was pretty good.
That's terrific news. Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. I virtually attended Council on Aging meeting on Monday night, and there were a number of updates in terms of meals and things getting delivered that might be worth just kind of going through just for a moment. At Thanksgiving time, there were a lot of meals picked up through the Adopt a Meal program. I think 55 meals, more than 100 donors were involved with that. At Thanksgiving, the Green Tomato actually donated 125 meals, and they were donated and delivered, including a note from Dementia Friendly Reading that went with that as well. In addition, the Representative Jones Thanksgiving activity and the support from Representative Haggerty and others, there were 125 bags donated and picked up. So there were quite a few meals that were distributed around Thanksgiving time. We heard last night there was a goodie bag drive something. You drive up.
Drive by.
Yeah, no trouble with the word drive by. So there was some goodie bags that took place that way that went through. That was great. Kerry Valley was participating in the meeting. She indicated that the food pantry is now providing service. Basically, since the pandemic, there are about 100 new people that have been participating with the program since that time. So there is need in the community, and it's great that folks have been continuing to donate gift cards and things. That's been very helpful. There also, Kerry mentioned that there are some hot meals being delivered to some exceptionally needy families, folks who just aren't mobile at all right now, and that's being taken care of, which was really nice to hear. Yeah, and that's kind of what's going on from the council.
Mark, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Speaking of this volunteering, I was going to ask you, and I don't know if this is the appropriate time, if there are volunteer opportunities like handing out chicken pies at the Pleasant Street Center, what's the best way for select board members to get invited?
Why don't you send me an email and I'll forward them. I can't say what's happening today, but I can say that in the summer, there were some volunteer opportunities, but they were sort of being organized carefully from a health standpoint.
Well, I enjoyed participating in the mask event, and I think we're all smarter now about staying safe. And so, okay, that'll be great. I'll send you an email. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Carla?
Hey, thanks. I apologize if I missed it. Do we have a Vasc meeting set up in the near future, or are we waiting till next year?
I haven't heard anything.
Well, you don't have one set up at the moment, but I was hoping to schedule you guys before your January 5th meeting so that at the 5th meeting you could make your recommendations. So anytime between now and the 4th or 5th.
Do you have a sense of how many openings we need to interview for? Or is this so, can we get it done in a couple hours in one night, or?
Oh yeah, we only have a few applications. I'd say maybe 5.
This is for both historic.
Can you? Oh,
I'm sorry, is it historic and historic district?
Yeah, there's been a couple in both of those, and then I think there's another one in a different board that just happened to come in.
Great. Sorry, Vanessa, go ahead.
thanks, Mark. It would be great to know exactly which boards and committees have vacancies so that we can help spread the word about where we need some help.
I actually just posted the full list of vacancies, I think on Monday on the website. So if you go to the volunteer opportunities page, there's a link that says see all opportunities or full list, and then it lists every board that has an opening at the moment.
That's perfect. Thanks
I
very
can pull it up if you want to see it real quick right now.
Yeah, would you mind doing that? I was just trying to do that, but it might be, anybody who's watching might be happy to look at that too. Thank you.
Caitlin, what's the new one that came in?
There's 2 for each of the historic commissions, I believe, and then there was one for.
Was there a constable? Maybe.
Well, no.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yes, but no. I'll explain that.
Okay, I think I know.
Time. Or I guess I can explain it now. We did get an application for a constable, but it turns out he's not a Reading resident. So.
I can share the screen. I have it here.
Quicker than me. I just got it too.
Yeah, one of the historics was just some shuffling around, if I recall.
Yes. And then we just happened to get a resignation on the other historic commission at the same time to make things a little more confusing.
Okay. So the constable is still open.
We have others, but there is one position open, yes. It's not like we have none, but.
Okay. And has everything been posted?
Yes, this was posted, and the other positions were posted
I mean,
individually.
the notice, sorry, like a 2-week notice, public notice.
Yes.
Okay.
Right, so folks at home, if you're interested in volunteering on one of many boards, you have many choices right now. Is the form that people fill out to indicate their intention available online now?
Yes. It's on this same page if you, oh, did it? Am I still sharing my screen or did it stop?
You are. Yep.
Oh,
Still
I
sharing.
am. Okay, you can see it, sorry. So,
Great, volunteer application, got it, under volunteer information. Great, yeah, so please.
And they should look under the town manager. Is that where this is?
yep, town manager and then volunteer opportunities right here.
Okay,
Yeah, and you can get there directly from the homepage also.
wonderful. Okay,
I
great.
believe it's also linked on the clerk's page too.
Yeah,
I think
sure.
it's linked a couple places.
Awesome. Great, okay, any other questions on liaison reports? No. Bob, anything you'd like to add?
Just quickly, in case you haven't noticed, a snowstorm is coming. One can never be sure how accurate the forecasts are, but we're expecting about a foot, possibly more. It's supposed to be the lighter snow. I'd still urge people to be careful shoveling. This is not a time when you want a minor medical issue to cause you to go into medical care. The medical facilities are quite busy right now. And there should be a code red, either has gone out or will go out tonight. The trash delivery for the Thursday, Friday will be delayed a day. So please don't put your trash out tonight or tomorrow morning. It'll be all over the street when the plows get going. So again, everyone just be careful tomorrow and enjoy nice holidays. That's all I have.
Thanks, Bob. Okay, next on our agenda was public comment. Caitlin, has anything, no requests?
Let me just check my emails real quick, but I don't believe anything has come in. No.
I had a quiet office half hour this evening as well. Okay, great. So let's shift. Next on our agenda is discuss changes to liquor license fees, vote as needed. So discussion has come up about whether we want to revisit our fees for this year in particular, for the 2021. In the packet was some information. Let's see if I can grab it here. I'm sorry, I'm on a letter instead.
Mark, Caitlin also created a nice one-page summary that I think would be helpful if you want me to share that.
Yes, please.
And I need to correct a comment. I answered one of your questions earlier in the week inaccurately. Can you see the page here? Is that big enough?
Sorry, I've got the wrong
You can
screen.
make it a little bigger.
Yeah, that's pretty small.
How's that? Better? Still small.
If you can go a little bit more, it'd be even better. Even one more click. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we're getting
So
there.
this is a list, of the actual licenses you just approved and the current license fee. So just doing the quick math on all of this, there's about $70,000 in fees. I had incorrectly said to one of the members a higher figure. That was if all the licenses were issued. So this is the actual, we actually have less licenses issued now than 4 years ago, which is interesting. So that's, there's $70,000 on this page. 9 of them are restaurant, 3 clubs, 1 beer and wine that's a little cheaper, and 6 package stores with none available. So those are the 4 categories that if you're going to consider changing the fee, those are the only 4 worth discussing.
Board members, anyone want to start out?
Can I ask a quick question? Bob, it's come to my attention that some clubs in other communities opted not to open this year. Do you have a comment? I'm under the impression that Meadowbrook was open this year. Do you have any knowledge of the Reading Veterans Association of the Knights of Columbus being open this year?
Caitlin does.
Yes, so I reached out to the American Legion. They closed from April or the end of March until June, and then in June they reopened following COVID guidelines. The Knights of Columbus, I'm not exactly sure if they closed for any period of time, but I do know they are currently open following the COVID guidelines. And Meadowbrook was opened. They're closed now due to the season's over and the tent is not up. So yeah, but they were open all summer.
So is the Legion that you mentioned the same as the Reading Veterans Association, or is that a fourth?
Yeah, they're the same.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Sorry.
Mark?
Please.
Mayor? Thanks, Mark. So I don't know where the rest of the board stands, but I would 100% be behind drastically decreasing or waiving the restaurant all alcohol, the restaurant beer and wine. Can you scroll down for me, Bob? You said there's 4 or 5 categories, or Caitlin, I'm not sure.
Then package store is the last one.
And yeah, I think the one that I would be inclined to keep is the package store, all alcohol as is. You know, my main focus right now is not burdening restaurants. They're my top priority. I think whatever we can do to help them stay afloat, we should do. So I don't know what that looks like. I mean, we did receive a letter from someone indicating that many towns are waiving or decreasing. I understand that that is a decrease in revenue for the town. But I think that we benefit as a community long-term by supporting our restaurants now.
Thanks, Vanessa. Karen?
So 37 times 13. That's a lot of revenue. I generally agree with what Vanessa said. I understand that people have to get their alcohol from somewhere. So my understanding from speaking to a number of people in the industry is that the package stores have weathered this pandemic quite well. So I agree that if we were to do something, I would like to benefit the restaurants. And I would love to, I would like a partial solution rather than a full solution. I don't know what this comes out to be. It's probably, this is the bulk of it right here, 3,700 times 13. So that would be my preference, to not completely lose all of that revenue, but absolutely I'm open to making some accommodation. And I do agree that it's important that we support them, and they're key to our downtown success.
Thanks, Karen. Carlo?
Okay, sorry about that. Yes, I agree with Vanessa with one caveat. I would like to include Pamplemousse with the top category, given that they're a hybrid model and heavy on the food and specialty. Yes, they do have they have a decent sized section, but to me, that's not their go-to. So I am open to exactly what Vanessa said, but I would like to include Pamplemousse as well.
Are we able to differentiate? So I agree with Carlo. I love the premise. Are we able to differentiate between Pamplemousse and some of the other package stores? Do we have that right to waive that fee? Because I want to make sure we don't get ourselves into legal problems.
Yeah, I would say normally the answer would be no, but because Pamplemousse does have a technically different kind of license, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would suggest if the board makes any kind of motion, subject to approval by town council, is a simple solution to that. Normally, if there's 6 that are all part of the same category, then it's all or none. But again, 5 are allowed by legislation, and 1 was issued through a special legislation for Pamplemousse. So that might make it different. I don't know.
Yeah. Let me.
In that case,
sorry. Go ahead, Vanessa.
Thanks for the clarification, Bob. If that's the case and we're able to sort of carve out Pamplemousse, then I fully support Carlo's suggestion that we include them in the exclusion of the fees.
So let me weigh, I haven't weighed in yet. Let me do that. I think that the focus of where we can do the most good relates to restaurants, where they've lost out dramatically on the number of patrons that can come in and can basically consume on premise. And to me, that really is kind of the list of restaurants, all alcohol and beer and wine that fit into that category. I agree that package stores in general, I don't think have been hurt. In fact, maybe even the opposite direction. I'm not sure exactly where Pamplemousse fits. I had the impression that it was only takeout and not kind of in-store or in-restaurant dining. And if that were the case, then their license actually is a package store license, and I think that their revenue comes from takeout, from buying complete sealed containers, I guess is the right description. So if that's correct, I probably would be inclined not to include them, but rather to stay with the restaurants, both the beer and wine and the all alcohol. I lean toward Karen's point also. I think that it's important that we do something and that we're very helpful. And I think doing anything is going to be helpful, obviously. But maybe if we did kind of the 50% reduction, that would make a lot of sense. I'm sensitive even to our discussion last night where we talked about some very broad town goals in terms of social services, psychiatric assistance, social workers, things like that. It will come down to an issue of funds. So my inclination is let's be helpful. 50%. Looking at some of the towns, there's a variety of between waived, reducing 50%, reducing 40%, and doing nothing. I would be inclined on the reduce 50%. Again, I think that the restaurants would be the right ones, generally speaking. Carol.
Mark, so my quick math says that those 13 restaurants represent $45,000 in permit fees.
So,
sorry, actually,
sorry,
Carla was
Mark.
next. Hang on, Carla was next. Go ahead.
Thank you. I think the top 13 is 48,100. I'm assuming we're including Bangkok Spice as a restaurant, and I would also like to include the clubs because they've been impacted quite a bit, and who knows how many members they've lost over the past 9 months due to COVID. Never mind. I know their license is not a money generator; it's to sustain the club. But obviously, that money helps to sustain the club. And who knows again how many people haven't renewed or are not going to pay their fees or are unable to pay their fees to be a member. So I'm pretty sure, Mark, we're all on the same page that Bangkok Spice was included in the 13. So that makes 14. I would like to include the clubs. I would like to do at least 50%. I understand your thinking, Mark, and I don't disagree, but the restaurants have been hit the hardest. They're going to continue to be hit the hardest. It's going to be a long winter for them. I know this doesn't put them over the top for anything, but everything helps because everything else is going up. Insurance goes up, rent goes up, payroll's going up January 1st. Everything's going up. So at least 50% for me. I'd like to even do more if the board would agree. Thank you.
Mark?
Vanessa, please.
Thanks. So I agree with Carlo on doing more here. I do have a question for Bob, and I apologize for putting you on the spot here, but can you sort of ballpark estimate the revenue that comes in from the meal tax in any given year?
Well, I can do that before March. It was 400,000 odd. I don't know since, partly because the state stopped collecting it, and so they stopped paying us. And not to say they forgave everyone, but they deferred it. And I don't believe they've yet collected since April. So I really don't know how COVID has impacted that number, but 400,000 was ballpark.
Is that annual?
Yes.
Okay. So where I'm going with this is I agree it's about $50,000 that we would be sacrificing potentially in this upcoming budget cycle. However, more than half of these are small, local, family-owned businesses on the restaurant side. Obviously, we have some large chains as well. I want to be mindful that we're not being penny-wise, pound-foolish, where, you know, we're haggling over $25,000, and yet, you know, these restaurants could bounce back in a year, within, you know, hopefully by the spring, where we can make some outside seating available again. And if the meal tax comes back, or when that comes back, the town will benefit. If these restaurants go under, then the town loses both a local establishment as well as the revenue generated from that empty storefront. So I would much rather be supportive of these restaurants to keep them in business. Every little bit is going to help them. I agree with Carlo, it is going to be a tough winter. So I would be in favor of waiving the fee entirely for the restaurant, all alcohol, and the restaurant beer and wine, and the clubs as well. So if we're sort of, if we have to draw a line in the sand, I would prefer to waive the entire fee.
Karen, it's you and me.
Yeah, I'm okay. Thank you. I'm okay with adding in Bangkok Spice. Thank you, Carla, for pointing that out. It's kind of weird off by itself, but yeah, I'm very mindful that not only have we asked, or not only do we have a need for additional social services positions in town, that is going to cost money. I heard a repeated refrain from multiple departments about all of the extra cleaning supplies and effort and work and cost associated with COVID. Was not even aware of the meals tax. So that's kind of interesting. So Bob, Bob, I haven't even checked my receipts from restaurants this year. Are they not collecting it, or are they collecting it and they haven't turned it over?
I'll speak from what I understand. The restaurants are charging it,
Okay.
but the state is not collecting it from them yet, recognizing the cash flow. And that information could be out of date. I know that was true through the end of the summer.
Okay. Yeah. So I want to do something. You know, these are businesses, and I'm going to continue to support them. And I just think we have to be fiscally responsible. So I would prefer to stay with a 50% for the restaurants, and that's kind of where I would be, including Bangkok Spice.
Yeah, yeah, I'm fine with the clubs participating also, but I think that, you know, obviously every little bit helps, but I do think we have to have some fiscal responsibility. There's some revenue coming in, although not what anybody has been used to. I completely understand that, but the town's in that same situation, and the fact is that we have also lost out on those food tax revenues, and we're looking at requests for, you know, for increases, and we need to fund them from something. And, you know, part of this is, you know, there are some receipts that come in. I understand nowhere near what was expected. And I know that we need to do something that's meaningful. I think 50% is meaningful, and it's indicating clearly our support for these folks and what's going on. I'm inclined to do partial and not complete. Carlo.
Thanks, Mark. Bob, are you okay with any version we've just proposed? Can we absorb that? I mean, I know we can. I don't know how to phrase it, but it's a one-time thing, and it stinks for all of us, for everybody, you know, that's dealing with this, consumers, owners, you know, and it's going to get a little bit worse before it gets better. We don't have the full picture, but is that, I don't know if I even asked a question, but are you okay with what we're proposing?
Is this like being king for a day? Let me tell you what I believe is true. As far as I know, all of these establishments have already paid the fee. So we're talking about issuing them a refund. Given that they've paid a fee, it's current year revenue. So don't worry about next July and those budgets per se. It's, do we have a revenue problem in the current year? You know, and last year was tough. We definitely missed out on excise taxes by 400,000. It was not a revenue deficit, but it was not a pretty revenue picture. And things have not gotten materially better in excise taxes, although to be fair, we don't really know until February what the car thing looks like. But, you know, as a municipality, we are far better than many businesses because our property taxes don't change. You know, maybe people pay them slower. Maybe they pay them, you know, with high interest rates years later. But our revenue stream is pretty good compared to any other organization. So, you know, we can absorb whatever number you're comfortable with this year. And if we, you know, we miss on revenues by 25 or 50,000, then shame on me for thinking that. It's really a question for the board. I don't think that I would be more concerned if you were giving up future revenues in future years because of what you heard over the last two meetings. It would be terrible to, you know, have to pick $50,000 or $100,000 out of our budget or John's budget and just eliminate whatever we thought we were doing. But where it's current year, to me, you don't look at it that way. You know, we've already got budgets. We've already spent money. We normally generate excess revenues and save on expenses. So, you know, I wouldn't think we're in a crisis situation there. And again, our revenues are certainly better than the organizations you're looking at here. So I can't really give you an opinion on what to do, but I would not say by any means that it's a crisis that you do anything. You know, whatever you do, we'll deal with.
Well,
Mark, I have a proposal.
Let Vanessa go. I want to hear what she
Okay, great. Thanks, Vanessa. Go ahead.
Thanks, Carla. So we don't have a tiebreaker today. We have an even number. So I'd like to recommend a compromise. So what if we split the difference between waiving it entirely and 50% and land at 75%?
I think that's fine. Or maybe even say, for example, it's $1,000 for restaurants and for the larger number, something like that. But I'm fine with 75. Karen, does that work for you? Yeah, so maybe think the other way. How about if it was $1,000? Lower the restaurant one, it's 3,700?
Yeah, I think it would be more helpful for you to pick a dollar figure.
Yeah, what if we just had $1,000 for those? In the case of the restaurant beer and wine, which is Bangkok Spice, $750, something like that.
I'm fine with 1,000 and 750.
Okay.
I think the clubs, you know, would we be comfortable, maybe make it 300 for the clubs? I'm sort of making up numbers here.
I like a lower amount for the club since a lot of those guys are veterans.
Fully agree. I mean, that one we're really
not okay with a golf club, you guys.
Well, we can't separate.
Do anything for the veterans.
We can't separate it. That's the problem.
Right. So, yeah, I'm just like, we're going from what, 75,000 down to like 14,000 in revenue. And you know what? Correct me if I'm wrong, but these permit fees, they fund the health department that we're expanding. I mean, to keep everybody safe.
It's a goodwill gesture.
So
I know. You guys can outvote that. I'm uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable taking that big of a hit on the permit fees.
So if we were to make a motion for this, could we recommend 1,000 for the restaurant, all alcohol, 750 for the restaurant beer and wine, 300 for the clubs, and maybe 700 or 650 for Pamplemousse, assuming Pamplemousse passes legal muster.
Caitlin, that's just package goods, right? It's only takeout at Pamplemousse, or am I wrong?
Right, yeah, she can only sell alcohol to be consumed off of her property at home in their original packages. So she is considered a package store, yes.
And she's allowed to have taste testing, but can't charge for it on premises. So yes, all of her alcohol is sold to go.
That one to me still fits into package store. Nothing against them at all. I love the store, but it's not that they've lost out on on-premise sales. With everyone else, that is the case.
Well, they lost one of their major marketing efforts, which was the tasting, because the tasting does drive the sales. So I suspect if we ask them out, we hear. But yep.
They've taken a big hit, trust me. They've taken a big hit. They're a specialty market with alcohol. I know the license is a package store license, but they're a specialty market with alcohol. And that's my industry, so I know that well. If they were strictly a package store like Bay State or Square Liquors, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But they are a small family business owned specialty store that happens to have a package license. So that's the way it is.
I side with Carlo on this one. I'd still like to see them
If
get a
allowed, if
break
allowed, right, if allowed. Yes.
So can I recommend $6.50 for Pamplemousse? Would we, Mark and Karen, would you be okay with that?
So why wouldn't they be 1,000?
If we're following roughly the same formula as we ended up at $7.50 for the restaurant beer and wine. I mean, if someone wants to, take out a calculator and make these easy numbers.
Yeah, can I suggest, what if we left that one at $7.50? So we have three kinds of activities, right? We've got the kind of the restaurant at 1,000, where it's beer and wine only. We drop to $7.50 and extend that to, because Pamplemousse is full alcohol, aren't they? Yeah, I'm inclined not to create a fourth category.
I'm comfortable with that if you are, Carlo.
I don't like it, but we have to vote. I'm sorry, but we have to make a decision. I know what you're saying, Mark, but I'm still, I'd like to carve them out, but
So I carve them out to a different category, or
no, they're this category with a special issue, but they're not any way like the other five. They're not even close as far as concept goes. They have a food component, cheese component, housewares, kitchenwares, specialty, crackers, chips, dips. It's not even close.
yeah,
Right. So
for under $50, I have no problem. That's fine.
we probably just need to be a little bit careful. Oh, I have a question before
might
we
not be
vote on
allowed.
this.
So
So that'd be 600 if allowed. Go ahead.
I have a
sorry,
question.
Mark, what was that? What was
So
the
as you had
600?
suggested, so here's kind of what I heard. Let's see if it's what everyone is seeing. So the restaurant all alcohol would be 1,000 just for this 1 year. All of these are just for this 1 year. Restaurant alcohol at 1,000. Restaurant beer and wine 750. For the clubs, 300. And for Pamplemousse, I guess, is the other category here, and you had suggested, I think, 600.
Yes. Could I ask whoever's sharing the screen if you wouldn't mind making a sort of clean sheet here where we can list these out just in a row so we can all see the numbers and those at home can follow along a little bit easier as well?
You want me to add it to this list here?
Sure, that would be great. Yeah. Maybe yeah.
1,000. Okay. Clubs would go to 300. Right. And restaurant beer and wine would drop to 750 for the 1 year. And then the Pamplemousse exception to 600. little small, but
Yep.
so I would be willing to support those.
Mark, can I ask Bob a
Can
quick question?
Sure, I can.
Bob, do the restaurants also have a, it's hard to say this word, a victualler's license that they have to pay that is in the same cost category in Reading?
It is. It's orders of magnitude smaller in cost. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, Caitlin.
Interesting.
It's-
Okay.
Yeah, a common victualler is only $50.
Okay, thank you.
Vanessa,
I'm just doing some quick math in Excel. I want to make sure that we are being equitable across these categories into roughly the same percentage discount or reduction. So if you just wouldn't mind giving me 1 second to confirm.
I think they're ballpark, and I think they're giving, they're very giving on our part. I think we're showing a lot of support here for this community that I know is getting very, very hard hit. So I would not be inclined to lower numbers further. I think we're in the right range here.
Nope, we are very fair in the 75% reduction range across the board. So I'm comfortable with these numbers.
Okay, so let's create a motion supporting these, and should we do a separate motion on Pamplemousse so that if for some reason we're not able to do that, it doesn't create a problem with the other ones?
That's a good idea.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yep, agreed.
Okay, so let's structure. So at this point, we're changing, correct? Because the fees were established. So this would be a motion to change the fees for restaurant all alcohol, clubs, restaurant beer and wine for this is calendar 2021 that we're talking about?
That's correct.
Yeah. As follows. So the all alcohol reduced to $1,000. Sorry, restaurant all alcohol reduced to $1,000. Clubs reduced to $300. Restaurant beer and wine reduced to $750. And the special legislation permit, sorry, I stopped. I didn't say special legislation. Let's stop there.
So moved, we can do that.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Vanessa. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll go to a roll call. Voting yes would be to support these reductions. Voting no would be to not support these reductions. So Carlo?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Mark, yes. We're 4-0. Okay, then let's have a second motion. So this motion would be to reduce the package store all alcohol license special legislation. Thank you. Permit for Pamplemousse. So reduce it to $600 for calendar year 2021.
Second.
Oh, sorry. Can I should somebody move that one?
Oh, sorry. Thought you that was. Oh, so moved.
Thank you. A second.
Second.
Thanks, Vanessa. Any further discussion? Great. Let's take the vote. Carlo?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Mark, yes.
Can I
Okay.
ask a quick question?
Sure.
In your policy on the website, is it okay if I just footnote this as a one-time exception? Because anyone looking at the license fees needs to understand what the base fee is for next year.
I think that's important to do exactly that. Yes. Okay. And I think that the motions were clear that it's only for that calendar year. But to your point, this is an abnormal year.
Yeah, just thinking of, the different vacant spots and the restaurants coming in. I just don't want any confusion.
That's a great idea.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's see.
Yeah. Excuse me, I would make sure it's highlighted well, Bob, then.
Yeah.
Go. One-time 2021 exception.
Yeah, one-time COVID relief.
Great. Okay, Carlo, Ann wasn't able to join tonight, so we're going to defer discussion on the communication policy, which would have been the next item on the agenda. The next couple of items are discuss role of select board liaisons, discuss select board staff working relationships. So I had put together a couple of ideas that I wanted to share. So let me see if I'm able to do that. Sorry, I'm going to organize my screen so I can see better. Okay. All right, let's talk about liaisons first. Let me share my screen. You folks able to see that? Is that big enough? Does that work? Everybody see it? Great. Okay. So actually, sorry, I'm going to show you a different one first. When we last had our discussion, we talked about getting together with department heads. And I think it was left to me to suggest how we might do that, who we might talk to, and kind of why, kind of what's going on. So I put together just a quick list for discussion that I thought would make some sense in terms of reaching out to some department heads, having, typically, it could be a couple of members if that works. I think that would be great. I selected a few areas that I thought maybe made sense to do first, and maybe more pair oriented, and then some other areas that I thought could follow, perhaps as individuals. In many cases, it was based on who is either the liaison to these groups or who's already working with them on things, but not always. In some cases, it might make sense to shake that up a little bit. But the notion that I had, and again, for discussion, was that, number one, it's a point of connection. We've talked about how COVID has restricted things quite a bit, but this is a chance for a connection to see what the hot topics are. I guess on kind of on both sides, what's of interest, and to see if there are concerns, requests, or ideas, and just kind of have an informal, open way to kind of do that. And then we come back and have a discussion about kind of some of the things that we've learned, probably for the second meeting in January. So this is what I had been thinking about, but here's an idea on how to do it. And you want to share that with other members. See, what are your thoughts? Carl.
Yeah, I remember we touched upon this a few meetings ago, and these are informal discussions, correct?
Okay. Correct.
No, I like what you did. I think it shouldn't cause any problems, and I think it's a good thing. You're right. You can't just pop in town hall, pop in the DPW and say, "Hey, how's it going?" And that's going to be for a while. So anything to help communication would be great.
Vanessa, any comments?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fine. I think, we can call them informal, but I think anytime the board is having conversations with department heads, I think we as board members should be sensitive to the fact that there's always going to be an air of formality to the conversations, especially now that, to Carlo's point, we can't just walk in and chit chat. But yeah, I mean, I think the premise is great.
Karen?
No, I'm in support of this. I'm just wondering if we can play Monopoly and I could trade conservation for another area, because I literally just had a conversation and that's a very small department.
Yeah, so anything is possible. What I thought is perhaps the ones I listed on top might be ones to do, sooner, kind of make sure we have those done more timely. And the others, I think, just would be kind of interesting anyway. In some cases, they're already liaison assignments, so I don't think it's anything out of the ordinary. And if they're one-on-ones, again, not really out of the ordinary. So these are just some some scribbles, if you will. I rather than kind of have us sit here and not have a plan, I thought I'd just take a shot at it. So that's what I did here.
Thank you. Yep.
Sure. Bob, do you have any thoughts on this?
No, I think that, you know, you're going to have different opportunities with different department heads based on what's going on. And it's
Right.
going to be hard to sort of customize and say all of this will be done by a certain date, for instance.
I think you can just start with outreach and
Yeah.
see if
Yeah, I just heard the part about, you know, feedback at a certain meeting, and I just say, you know, you can't be sure about that.
I think that's fair. Again, I just kind of was spitballing here a little bit just to get it started. Okay, if folks are okay with that, let me share one other thing that's very, I think, related. So this is thinking a little bit about liaisons, and I think that this may actually end up being part of that discussion. So I'm seeing that they might weave together. One of the things that I think has come up that I've heard of anyway is the notion of what's the best way for us to make requests for discussions or other things. How do we want it to flow? What's the best way and most efficient way of doing that? So I kind of said, all right, if we want to have a discussion, then a request for, call it information, would probably go to a department head from a board member, putting Bob in copy and just saying, hey, I was wondering ABC, can you give me some feedback on this? And just have Bob in copy on what's going on. Depending on kind of where that goes, what's required next, if it needs further action, then that probably should come back to the board as something to be talked about. And then the board to agree if there's kind of a direction to take or an assignment of, okay, great, can you please be in charge of that? Continue that discussion, please be in charge of it. And again, I'm offering some ideas here for feedback. You know, I to some extent, I think that's how it works now. But just wanted to make sure. So then the reason I put it here also, let me talk it through and then I'll stop. For liaisons, I think that the role that we most recently have talked about is that they are kind of the contact person in both directions, but to some extent where a department or a board is hoping to communicate with the select board, then they share information and then the liaison reports back to the board. Here's what's going on, here's what's happening. The board might request further action. The liaison might request further action. And the way that should happen is through the discussion with the board. And then it's kind of like, hey, I'd like to be able to do ABC, or we should do ABC, what do you think? And, you know, somebody would have to be the point person. So that's part two. And then the third part would be if there are special requests, they should be generated through a board discussion. And then who would be assigned to do it? Assigned by the board. It could be the liaison, and probably would be typically, unless there was some special reason why it shouldn't be. How does that structure sound?
Oh, I think that makes sense. I think the one area that I think is important here to delineate is that so the liaison doesn't have authority to act unilaterally without board approval or to provide guidance, again, without board approval, because you know we function as a board, not as 5 individuals. And the other component of that is when there are significant discussions, actions, situations that are taking place, the default, in my opinion, should not be that only the liaison is informed. If there is a major situation or a significant matter that will be of interest to the board, then the full board needs to be informed in some way, shape, or manner. Because I think one of the challenges that we've seen is that the board is not always informed because only the liaison is informed. So information sharing, and this goes back to sort of the broader discussion that we've had around communication, the the board needs to know what's happening in a timely fashion, not just the liaison.
So I'm kind of typing and listening, so I apologize. So are you suggesting that if it's important to be defined and it can't wait, that we want to have a mechanism for that, meaning that it can't wait till the next meeting, at which point it would be communicated? Is that what you're suggesting? That there's some things that shouldn't wait?
Well, I think it depends. I think discretion, in the hands of the department heads isn't a bad thing. I think there are some things that certainly can wait till the next meeting. I think, sometimes the town manager makes us aware of something that's happening in town before it's made public. What used to be a sort of an easy, casual conversation now requires sort of more structured, formal, either emails or board discussions on an agenda. And I think we need to make better use of email in information sharing so that everyone, all 5 members of the board are on equal footing. And the timeliness question is really dependent on, is it urgent? I mean, Bob is great at letting us know when sort of the unexpected happens and giving us a heads up before a press release is issued. But sometimes for something that maybe isn't public ready yet, I still think the board needs to be informed.
Would it be possible that, and I'm going to ask for Bob's opinion in a second also, but is it possible that the liaison would be the right person to kind of make that determination about kind of, can it wait, can it not? And in the can it not, if Bob wasn't already planning to share the information by email, ask that he does. The liaison would take on that responsibility. And that way, I'm sensitive to, if everybody's involved in everything, I don't know where we go. It's too hard. It's too much.
Well, I think, a reminder on, and we're not the first board that has had this conversation about the role of the liaison, but the role of the liaison is really meant as a reporting back structure or to facilitate discussion. It's not meant to be the go-to for future decisions.
Right, no decision.
I think that's an important distinction. So if there is something where a particular department or board thinks that it is necessary to inform the liaison of something that's happening, chances are the rest of the board is going to be interested. And I don't think that's the case of everyone wanting to be a cook in the kitchen. It's just a matter of knowing what's going on in the town. I mean, that's part of our job, is to be informed. So just because, and then if there's cause to have board discussion, great. We put it on an agenda. Everybody's informed that it's coming, and everyone knows what to expect. If it's not, if it's just an FYI, then that's great. Now the full board knows what's going on.
So I'm thinking about Carlo's discussion today from CPDC meeting. I don't view anything there as requiring an instant action. I thought it was fine that it came through at a public discussion.
Absolutely, completely agree. And I think our liaison reports in our meetings make perfect sense for sort of the routine run-of-the-mill reporting back, X board is doing Y. I think it's the one-off unusual circumstances. I guess we can do the social media test. If it's going to blow up on social media, everyone on the board needs to know what's going on.
So I hear you on that, but I don't think that's a good test. I think there are plenty of issues that are
a little bit of a joke there, Mark. A little bit of a joke there.
Okay, thank you. Just making sure. I think there are plenty of other things that are happening. I would be comfortable trusting the liaison to kind of decide what should happen next. If it should get communicated immediately, in which case, we would ask Bob to do that. Or if you can wait till the next meeting as a report. And each of us take responsibility for that.
I have seen that not work out well, Mark.
Well, at some point, we have to trust each other as board members, right? To be able to kind of make that decision. And if occasionally it's not right, I'm sure that'll happen. But if it's regularly not right, that's a bigger issue, I think. Karen, looks like you had something to say. And Bob, I'm sorry.
Well, I agree with Vanessa's last comment. And so what I've been meaning, not to imply that I don't trust the liaisons, but I still feel like I'm sometimes in an information vacuum because maybe we haven't reinforced among ourselves that liaisons should be encouraged to distribute information and not necessarily on important topics. Wait until the next meeting. Like, I don't know that we've actually said that. And that puts a different spin on things because I'll tell you what I'm running into sometimes recently. And by the way, I very much appreciate Bob's been sending more emails about press releases, things lately. And I don't know if it's a coincidence or whatever, but absolutely appreciate it. I'm not even going to bother to acknowledge every single one because I already know his inbox is full, but definitely appreciate getting that information and it's being read. Sometimes when I'm asking Bob about things that I'm hearing about and which I cannot talk to other select boards about for fear of stepping on open meeting law problems, what Bob is in the position of saying then is, I've already spoken to the chair and the vice chair. And I've heard that a couple of times. It's pretty incredibly frustrating. So what can we do to get more information out to the other board members? That's the bottom line. Because we don't know which, sometimes it's the same issue. We have different residents calling all of us individually on the same topic. But so far, sometimes recently I've gotten the answer. I've spoken, and I shouldn't even say that. Sometimes it was, I've spoken to a chair or the vice chair, and I've also spoken to the liaison. So, but that's still only, that could potentially, it's only one or two members of the board. So that leaves 3 out. I think that's what I'm struggling with.
So can I just take that forward and then I want to let Bob comment also. So where it's information, that's one thing. Where it's discussion, it's not possible. So in other words, if just having the information, you're saying, yep, I just want to know, and then stop, full stop, not pursue it further, full stop. That's one thing. But as soon as you say, oh my God, I no, I'm not satisfied with it, I want to pursue it further. And there are 5 of us doing that. That's called a meeting. That's what the meeting has to be. We can't do that ourselves. So I think maybe what that helps us is define where the lines need to be. Maybe the answer is, yeah, it's information, but then you got to kind of stop and not share with the public, probably in that case also, until it comes to a public meeting. Sorry, Bob.
Thanks, Mark. Just to pick on Ann because she's not here. I think sort of hiding in the weeds behind a lot of this will be, you'll be helped greatly by the work Ann's done with me on the communication policy. I think from my perspective, for what that's worth, the most common frustration board members have is the feedback loop. Something came in, did it get responded to? And then, you get into the gray area of tell me what the response was. We all want to know. That's a different issue. But I think that, when you do see Ann's communication policy, I think you'll be quite happy that very clear delineation of how to close the loop is in there. Now, honestly, it's impossible to imagine every situation that might happen. So, she did the best she could. But my sense from the board is that's a common frustration. And then I do say, well, I have talked to this one or that one or two. I never go more than 2. And it's kind of in their hands to tell me, what my next steps are, if any. And again, Ann will address that in the communication policy. So I think that, you can continue this discussion when you see what she has. And I think it's, is it on the 5th, I think, January 5th agenda?
Yeah.
So, you'll be seeing it, in another week or 2 weeks, let's say. I think that'll help guide this discussion better. You know, I'm very careful, and I didn't used to be, but I learned 4 years ago. And I understand that every board and every member has a different style, and that's called America. That's a good thing. But I just have to be cautious because I don't want to do anything because one member wants me to and the other 4 might not if they knew. So I just want to be real careful about, well, you guys have by majority set this in pattern, so I will do it until you change it. You know, I'm fine with that. I want to be real careful about sort of using my own judgment on the fly. In an emergency, I don't care what your rules are. I'll do what I need to do. But, you know, on non-emergencies, I want to be real careful about using my own judgment because I don't want to have 5 sets of judgments with each of you. If you see what I mean. You know, and I say this respectfully, given the age we live in with social media, there's not a lot that goes on that cannot wait till your next meeting. There just isn't. If you felt like the issue has been addressed through some path that you've created, I don't think you have to know every detail about that as often as you might think. That it can't wait for a full discussion with the board. You meet every 2 weeks. You know, 5 years ago, the boards didn't have nearly the access to electronic communication that you do now. 20 years ago, no way. Somehow they all figured it out. So, you know, respectfully, and I understand the pressures of social media, but, you know, you set those expectations for instant response. You know, think about that. Is that reasonable? And I'll kind of close with the thought that, you know, it's really interesting. You know, poor Carlo as secretary has certainly done yeoman's work this year, but it's a huge difference whether I'm physically sitting here at my desk and I can respond to something right away and I'm somewhere else and I don't see it even for several hours. So keep in mind that no matter what policy you set up, just, you know, human beings can't respond the exact same way every time. You know, it could be, and it could be, you know, for instance, if, and this isn't in Ann's policy, but if the policy was, you know, tell the secretary everything you know as soon as you can, including, you know, I can't think about this for 2 days. You know, that's an example. You just want to be really careful about setting expectations that I or staff can get back to any of you with your policies instantly. Because sometimes that happens, as he knows, and quite often it can't. So I do think seeing Ann's policy will help. And I think after you discuss it and think about it, you'll then all figure out, okay, what's left? What didn't get covered?
Thanks,
Mark,
Bob.
if I may.
Go ahead.
Thanks. So Bob, thanks for the insight. I agree with you on several issues that you mentioned. I think I'm going to go out on a limb here and say we might be overthinking this. I don't think we need a policy on a policy of a policy for liaisons. It sort of backs us into a corner, and I don't know if it's necessarily an efficient use of time. I will say that, you know, when it comes to I'll table the discussion on closing the loop. To Bob's point, a lot of that might get addressed with Ann's policy in January. But when it comes to the liaison side, if an informational communication is going out to the liaison, there is no reason why it can't also go out to the full board. FYI, this happened. This is the status. We don't know when we'll get back to you on the next step. If a liaison is receiving that, the rest of the board can hear it too, and there's no action that needs to take place. There's no follow-up. It's literally just an FYI. I think if we start from that premise of 5 people just wanting to be informed on what's happening, I think the rest of it sort of falls into place. I agree with Bob that most things can probably wait. The one thing I will say about social media is that you're absolutely right, Bob, that 5-10 years ago, without social media, information traveled much more slowly. The reality is that social media, if you are a neighbor of something that is happening, the first thing you do is you post it on the Running Parenting Network, and then there's a fire, a figurative fire on social media, and everyone chimes in. So one of the things, it's not necessarily about instantaneous response, because I agree with you, Bob. I think that's an unrealistic expectation. But it is about being able to douse some of those flames if we're able, even if it's just a casual conversation with someone. If we're privy to certain information that maybe isn't quite ready to go public. And I agree, it's a fine line. But I would suggest that if an update's going to a liaison, instead of hitting, just Mark or just Carlo or just Karen, it goes to everyone. And that's it. And then that's sort of where it ends, unless someone puts it on the agenda for a future discussion.
So I actually think that's an important piece of it. And I think maybe that's where we fall down sometimes, is if there is an item that is of import to some members, to kind of have a forum for that question to be addressed, probably, by Bob at the next meeting. And the addressing might be, I'm on it, or it might be, here's the resolution, or it might be, here's when there's going to be a resolution. But maybe the notion that, one, it's acknowledged, two, it's going to be addressed, and three, it's going to be dealt with. Maybe that's one of the things that we want to make sure is taking place. The other thing that I think here, just to put it up on the table, is that the part of the notion, I think, is that we've talked about the role of the secretary, we talked about the role of the liaison. We got to talk a little bit about the role of the chair and the vice chair. And is that that's the first conduit of discussion, which also stops the discussion because two members have been talked to. So how do we deal with that? How do we find a constructive way so that there are 5 people, more in the loop, not 2 people? Go ahead, Bob.
And let me just explain what our longstanding default has been, that if you want to change it, that's fine. We have a list of liaisons that are really important to me and the staff. It tells us where to go. So if an issue comes up that pretty neatly fits into a liaison box, and there's 2 liaisons, that's who we communicate to. Let's say that's who I communicate to. And then get further direction as may be needed. And again, I'm not saying right or wrong, I'm just saying this is what we do. If there's only 1 liaison, then historically it's been liaison and the chair, unless the liaison is the chair, and then you use the vice chair. And if there's no liaison at all, chair and the vice chair. In my opinion, 2 members of the board is always better than 1, because again, I don't know whether you're around, how important it is. And the other thing, we have some staff that pay attention to some social media, but probably not nearly as much as some of you. Occasionally, I get an email from one of you saying, do you realize this is on social media? And those are very helpful. Don't assume I know. I definitely don't know. But if you see something that's blowing up on social media that can be quelled, the first thing you should do is tell us. And don't assume I know. And I don't, if 5 of you tell me, I don't care. I then have to figure out how to communicate back to you. But and in terms of, I agree with Vanessa's comment about, if you're going to share a factual piece of information or an update with a liaison, why not the whole board? I have no problem with that. And that happens occasionally. It seems like much more of our communication is something that comes in from a board member that then needs some kind of reply, as opposed to some kind of a fact I walked into and I should share. And so the complication becomes, one of you asks a question, and let's forget the liaison, it's a general question, and I answer. And then a second and a third member ask. And at some point I'm thinking, should I reply to the whole board? And then what happens when you have different opinions? It gets complicated, believe it or not. So Vanessa's right, we shouldn't overthink it. At a certain point, stop thinking, put it on an agenda, discuss it, would be my answer.
And maybe there's a way to notify the board that it's come up and it's going to be on the next agenda. So, answering the question of, hey, is this going to get discussed or not? I'm worried it's not coming up on the plate. We create a bucket called, call the town manager bucket.
Yeah, and I'm not covered by open meeting law, so I can sort of do anything I want. But I try to be really sensitive to the fact that you are, and not kind of lure you into situations where you'll have a problem. You know, and so by my nature, I don't share things with 5 members that often, but I don't object to doing it. You know, if there's clear understanding of under what circumstances. I don't know what the right answer is, but Mark's suggestion about the liaison decides would be very helpful to me. You know, if I don't have to decide, well, is this worth sharing with all 5 or not? I can't put myself in your shoes. I don't know the answer to that the same way you would. I can use my judgment and you can decide whether you like it or not, and we can try it that way. But I think as elected officials, you personally, as a group, have different understanding than I do about your role. You live it. I can only imagine it. So something that I might think is trivial, you might think, oh, no, that's really important to know. And I can't make that judgment the same way you do.
I think if I could, to Karen's point earlier, I think that you have been communicating more and it's been appreciated. I think that that's just, you know, last several months, that's just absolutely true. Sometimes, you know, you decide that, and I think that's been right. I think your judgment's just been right on that. I think other times members have asked you to communicate it more broadly also. And that's, I think, been right also. I think everyone has felt much more comfortable with that. So I think this is good. I think we should continue the discussion. I think we should hear from Anne, see what she has in mind. I want to show one thing with a little trepidation, but I want to show it because I think it'll help our thinking. And when we talk, you know, when Anne can talk with us also, and it's trying to address this question of closing the loop. And so I'm not trying, you know, I'm hoping you guys have already kind of done a bunch of stuff, and that's great. And we can take a look at it. That's wonderful. But I've tried to put together just a small spreadsheet. So from my perspective, what would closing the loop look like? And so I know it's really small, but let me, you know, it's got a number, it's got the date that the request or the topic came up. What is the topic? What's the request? When is the board going to discuss it, or when did the board discuss it? What's the next step? Who's the owner in terms of getting it to resolution? Who's the select board manager, bad term, but who's the one that's kind of following it? What's the follow-up date? What's the status? And then I put this little thing on the side, time since request, 30, 60, 90. So basically it's just a little, it's a clock that just kind of says, yikes, you know, this thing is lingering, let's get rid of it. And then there's a completion date. So the notion to me here was that this is a way to take issues, and hopefully a lot of them go on and come off instantly. The point is to catch the ones that don't come off. In other words, they aren't completed. I'm not wed to this at all. I you know, spent a few minutes just kind of doing a little brain dump as to what it might look like. But to me, these are the kinds of things that are important. Kind of, you know, what's going on, what's the request, who owns it, what's the status, how long have we been hanging on to it, and the goal is get it off the plate. Wow.
Just one question. So under request, is that a formal request, if you will, that's come to the full board, generally by email or at a meeting?
I'd say yes, or maybe in some cases it's a board request.
Okay, but it's not an issue that's come to one board member that hasn't come in front of the board in any way. That's a different topic, but.
Yeah, so I think it's got to come to the board. And I think that's this notion of there's got to be a board discussion about it. And it may be that it comes in, you get it, Bob, and you're able to deal with it or deal with it to some extent. And then it comes to a board discussion. And then the issue is, okay, some of my concerns have been, how do we make sure that we close on this topic? So I can put poor Ralph in the tree situation. So, you know, it's on here. I made up these dates, please, you know, so don't worry about the dates, but it's been something that's kind of lingering a little bit, a lot. We should just, you know, figure out what information do we need to make a decision? Can we make a decision and do it and close the loop? And, you know, I put, for example, the water tower, you know, cell tower activities. You know, the request was no additional cell tower, the board discussion date. The next step, town engineer working on plan, RFP for May. Who owns it? Ryan Percival. Follow-up date, you know, a monthly update on what's going on. something like that. Discussions with carriers. You know, one of the things we might want to do is we might, for example, we might want to say, hey, why don't we have the carriers come in and talk to us as a board? Anyway, just have a way to kind of track on this one. And, you know, bigger issues get put onto the future agenda list, not with a date, but onto the future agenda list. I think sometimes this is going to be catching the smaller things, but it's going to be catching the ones that, you know, we kind of would love to have resolved, but we haven't. And it's just a way to kind of put closure on it. Again, I just wanted to kind of launch this as an idea. Anne may already have done exactly this or better, and that's great. But I think some way there should be a way to kind of, you know, track things that we just don't want them to disappear and then come back and it's kind of like, yikes, we never dealt with that, you know, did we? So I could stop sharing. Anyway, that was just my thought. Sorry, I did a lot of thinking today. Any other comments? Or you want to just wait for Anne?
It's going to be a big spreadsheet was what my thought was.
Yeah, so there has to be a way to kind of move it to this like an archive sheet, which is kind of like, yep, off, you know, resolved, off.
And
it's not,
one issue starts out and it burgeons into several.
Yeah, yeah,
several lifespans.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think we don't need to create custom software or
right.
anything else here.
Yeah, Anne in the policy had used the phrase database, and I said, let's just call it a tracking system or whatever, something real simple. So she and I have not discussed anything with that example, let's say, but the concept of the kind of information to be retained, we have discussed, and she's got some of it in her policy draft.
Awesome. Anyone else want to drop a comment? That was resounding. Okay. I think that takes us through. Let me just check. Liaison, separate working relationships. We're not going to approve meeting minutes tonight because we haven't seen them in advance. Caitlin mentioned she just finished them, so you can send those out. We can have them for the next packet. That would be great. Future meeting agenda topics. So let's grab that just for a second. So,
Mark, do you have a tracking system for that?
So there's a system.
How big is that spreadsheet?
Yeah, no, and sorry, I just I had kind of taken these on for tonight, and then suddenly I realized that there was a lot of stuff to be discussed. So I tried to just kind of put it together. What I was going to do is grab the agenda and take a look at. Okay, so I'm going to share the agenda here. So I'm going to share the packet. Okay, so this is what's in the packet tonight. So you can see, you know, what's on the topics for the meeting, who's responsible. Then we have this future agenda column, or sorry, section, right? So your question, Carlo, on Vasc, in terms of what's going on. You know, it's January. You know, if we can make it work for the first meeting, that would be great. Draft DPW protocol. So a lot of these are generated either from what Bob and town staff already know needs to happen, or it's items that we've talked about that we kind of said, yeah, let's put that on a future agenda, but we haven't tightened down to the specifics. So the MVP, Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Update. Birch Meadow, obviously, you know, kind of continuing on that. Sustainability, electrification, Reading opportunities. This is the board and RMLD. We talked about actually having a joint meeting at some point to have some discussions and to see what's going on. And Karen, you've been sharing a lot of information, and Vanessa, in terms of what's going on, what programs they have, paying for a charger, things like that. I think we wanted to sit down. I wanted to sit down and chat with them in more detail and talk about kind of both the directions on both sides, see how we can leverage what they want to do and vice versa. You know, they want to leverage what we're wanting to do.
Mark, on the next one.
Yep, sorry.
So I've had discussions with them now over the past few years, and you know, the commissioner's stance, and they've been, you know, wonderful about inviting us to their meetings. They talk about what's available at their meetings, and they're very transparent with what's available to all the communities that they service. I don't know if getting the two boards together is going to bring up anything new. I mean, at this point, what I've recommended in the past is, this is where we rely on the staff to do the communication, to decide what's possible and how to move it forward and come up with ideas. This board has been very clear in what our priorities are around sustainability and electrification, et cetera. So, I mean, at this point, it's even part of Bob's goals. Given how packed our agendas are, I don't know what will surface here in the joint meeting with the 10 of us and their staff and our staff that can't be handled during sort of their business hours. I feel like the experts here on the municipal side and on the RMLD side are going to be much better equipped to come up with proposals than we are.
I think you're right on the implementation side. You're exactly right, but I'm not sure. I believe it on the I'll call it the strategy side, in terms of kind of what we're trying to do. I have a feeling that actually will generate some ideas, maybe some new ideas. I appreciate they have programs in place, and agree that part of it is figuring out who the right people are to talk together to move it ahead. I don't think the board should be engaged in that. I completely agree with you on that. But there's a higher level discussion that really hasn't taken place as boards. It has as individuals. And I think there's value in getting the groups together to talk that through a little bit. And we're not going to go to all their meetings, even through liaisons. They're not going to come to all of our meetings, even through liaisons. Be worth sitting down and talking. They are an asset of this community that I just feel like we can do a lot more with them. And I hope they feel the same way with us. I hope that they feel like we can help them do a lot of stuff. Go ahead, Karen. Sorry.
Okay. Would it be an opportunity for the select board to join them, and instead of them, I feel like there's so much more going on in our meetings than their meetings. It might be a more productive if we were willing to go to one of their meetings and we asked them for a spot on one of their meetings. If you want to try to do I'd rather see us all around a round table, but we can't do that. We get a Zoom meeting.
That's right. Get a square Zoom room, a rectangular Zoom room.
But I wonder if they would be willing to do that rather than, for some reason, I feel like it's a little, well, our agendas are hugely long and we're always pressed for time and there's always 17 things coming behind. As long as we get them done by 9, I feel like they have a little more flexibility. They're going to kill me.
Start at 4 o'clock. I mean, personally, I'm fine having a joint meeting kind of more on, especially to talk about that. Maybe it's part of their agenda.
Maybe that's another way to do it. Get it done.
Yeah. Would the board be comfortable suggesting that to the RMLD commissioners?
I had actually suggested something similar in the past, and again, I am happy to revisit it, but we've already had this discussion with them, or at least I have. So Karen, you and I, if you'd like, can chat about how to put this forward. But I honestly think that
just come up with bullets. I feel like, Vanessa, you're like, we need this to be not like so squishy. It needs to be very concrete. Is that what?
I think I think that's fine. We can absolutely chat with them again and try and get a meeting scheduled. I worry a bit that we're spending a lot of time talking and not actioning things.
Yep.
Sounds like a good goal.
So Colleen was trying to schedule a meeting in January with all of the towns and moving forward an electric charger. Could we, so you have, you don't have a date in there. So would February be a time frame to try to catch up and get an update and see what action items have taken place in this whole area?
Yeah, sounds great to me. And again, I just want to make sure that they hear from the board what we're trying to do as well. But yeah, sure, that sounds great. Tree line pesticide policy. Early Sunday hours at rec fields and parks. We should be dealing with that one too. Again, I'm not suggesting we put a time on it, but these are the kinds of things that are kind of sitting
Wow.
in the parking lot at the moment. Personnel policies. So that's something from Bob's schedule to come into here. Recent land purchases, any other land issues around town. We talked about having kind of a gathering to talk about it. So we look at the inventory, see what's in the inventory, talk about what's there. And it may be that the board needs, I don't want to use the word subcommittee, but individual or individuals to engage in the discussion somehow, that the board would ask a person or two people to, actually a person to do it would be better. And then there are the recurring items, the warrant kinds of issues and things like that. Are there other things that you're not seeing here that you'd like to put on? Bob, go ahead.
Mark, could I just ask you to keep scrolling down? I just want to see if 2021 follows this.
So there's the warrant 3221.
No, keep going on.
Oh.
If this is a warrant packet. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So I just wanted to explain kind of some of the things Mark's just been talking about. If on the, and it gets a little funny at the end of the year because there's not a lot of future agendas left right now for last year or this year. When something has a month and a year on it in your coming attractions, as it were, it means it's tentatively scheduled at a meeting. So it may only say January of 2021, but then when you flip to January of 21, you'll find whatever was listed. So the Vasc, I wasn't sure, whether it would be the 5th or the 19th, so it's in italics. But if it says things like spring or summer or nothing, then it's not on a specific agenda, just so you understand kind of the nomenclature.
Mhm.
And not everything on a future agenda is listed on that. For instance, vote to approve Verizon cable contract. That's something that at some point the board has to do, but it's not listed as, future agenda topic. I just know it's something you need to do.
Carlo, go ahead.
So I just had a question about, are we going to get an update on the Zani property? Is there an update? I'm not going to discuss it now, but is Bob, is there something coming in the coming months?
I asked our conservation agent today and a couple of others about procurement. I just got a little clarification, I think, from Camp Curtis. So I want to, proceed with both parcels that have similar work that need to be done. So I asked about the procurement process. So, not a lot going on, but we did clarify the Camp Curtis, which was good. And we now know the next step is basically to delineate the wetlands in both locations. After that's done, or at any time, the board can certainly want to have a discussion about it. I have no plans. Staff has no plans about the use of the land. We don't have a process set up. We just know that our first step was to understand what your assets are. And then once you have that, then you can have a discussion about what we do with them. You could have the discussion sooner, but staff and I certainly would have no plans on that right now.
No, thank you. That's perfect. Thanks.
So two pieces. One is just the update. Here's what's going on. And the other is, okay, hey, let's have a discussion at some point about what to do. But that doesn't make sense until we have more information. Cool. Anything else, Carlo, from your list of items that you'd like to see on future agendas?
Well, this is more of a personal item, actually, but it affects the public. I found out that we have a policy or a bylaw on trash pickup and times and noise, but we don't have anything for making deliveries to commercial businesses. It sounds like you can make a delivery to a commercial business at any hour, 24 hours a day. And I don't think that's right.
That's interesting.
So again, that's going to have to be a bylaw, but I think that's where the town is getting more densely populated. That could be something that is warranted, especially in downtown. obviously there's not many or any commercial businesses that are accepting deliveries with, lift gates and the backup notification beeping noise and trash trucks in residential areas, but in the downtown district that goes on a daily basis. And I know some trash companies violate that policy every now and then, but when you're making a delivery at 2 o'clock in the morning, at 3 o'clock in the morning, it's not nice to hear.
Got it. Thank you. Karen.
I was just wondering, up on the item that is on there about the tree policy, which I did get an update that is coming along and will be ready for us. Can we make sure that we invite the Conservation Commission and the agent to be part of that when it's presented? Because it's a joint, my understanding was it's a joint policy with DPW and Conservation, which I never really thought about it, but they're split between two divisions, departments, whatever we're calling them.
Yeah, I'll ask Jane. I don't know as much about, I know some of the issues, but I don't know as much about the policy. I do know that it was listed earlier on your agenda at one point, and Jane asked me to move it out to February because there was more discussions that need to be had. That's really all I know. So yeah, I'm sure we'll ask, we generally ask everyone to come. It's a lot easier in Zoom. Whether the CONSCOM wants to come as individuals or as a quorum is certainly up to them, but we'll
I
certainly.
think last time she presented a tree policy and shame on me, I didn't even realize it, but we didn't have anybody from conservation there. We just had DPW, and that's weird.
But the policy she presented was generic, not about conservation land. That's why. This specific one is for conservation land or jurisdictional areas, to be more exact. But
so going back to Mark's spreadsheet about the tree policy, so we have to go beyond the jurisdictional area because CONSCOM only handles wetlands, but it's still town property. It's right. So there's kind of this like overlap where they should probably work together.
Involved sometimes, but not all the time, I guess is the fairest way to say it. And when that happens, just so you understand, staff talks to each other and then we'll let CONSCOM know, oh yeah, there's this issue that the select board is going to discuss, but that's not the same as a formal invitation. We can certainly do that.
Maybe what we can do is as that item comes up, we can, that one is specific and includes conservation, obviously, but on other ones, maybe that's a question, just a screen that we go through and saying, hey, would CONSCOM have anything to say here? So let's invite them. Will that address that a little bit, Karen, or is it broader than that?
No, if this item is the tree policy that's coming, that they're working on together, then I just wanted to make sure they're all invited. That's great. If they're all invited, it's covered. Thank you.
Cool. Vanessa?
I have no additional comments. Thanks, Mark.
Okay. So the only other one that I think we probably want to put on here is where there are kind of ongoing issues that we want to talk about, having some kind of updates. And again, it may be that they don't become agenda items, but rather become town manager update items. I think that, for example, water tower updates, things like that. It may be that, occasionally that's an update that you can just deliver. Bob, there may be times when Ryan wants to engage, and there may be times when the board wants to say, well, hey, how about, X? Do we want to do such and such? We should have a discussion about that.
Yeah, and I think Anne has addressed at least some of those in her suggested policy. Not so much town manager report, but the idea that there is a feedback mechanism, and it could be through my report, through a liaison report, or et cetera.
Any other business for tonight, folks? No. All right. So someone made a suggestion to me that the teacher had to let the students out a little bit early for the snow day.
Guilty.
Excellent. Let's do it.
I have a motion, Carlo?
Motion to adjourn, please.
Is there a second?
Second.
Aaron seconds. All right, let's take a vote. Vanessa,
Yes.
Carlo,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Mark, yes. We are adjourned. Thank you,
Thank you all.
folks. Happy
Stay safe.
holidays to all. We're actually not planning to meet again until next year.
Yeah, happy holidays.